Welcome to Science, Health and Healing Encyclopedia of Children's Health Core and Ali Academy. I'm Dr. Majid Ali. The subject of this article is Microbes that Love Humans. Microbes that love humans. Physicians like myself who are interested in the state of health rather than the chemistry of disease have been aware of the microbial flora in the oral cavity, in the stomach, in the intestine, in the colon, in the perianal skin. I never take care of a patient without focusing on issues of gut fermentation, overgrowth of the yeast, leaky gut state, also sluggishness of the stomach because of altered gastric flora, and also the altered flora of the oral cavity. Indeed, there is a term I introduced, and you can Google it. It's on this encyclopedia, OSIP. O for oral cavity flora, S for stomach flora, I for intestinal flora, and C for colon flora. My purpose in introducing this term OSIP was to emphasize the essential connectivity and relatedness of the microbial flora in the various parts of the alimentary tract. For example, doctors continue to mindlessly antibioticize their patients. When the patient has sluggish stomach because of stress or fermentation in the colon, they have overgrowth of certain microbes. They do the test for H. pylori and they antibioticize them, and 3 months later they do the same thing, and 3 months later they do the same thing. Now, in that light, consider these words published in the New York Times on June 12th of 2012. Title: In good health, thank your 100 trillion bacteria. That is New York Times. I'll give you the quote. No one really knew much about them. That is idiotic nonsense. New York Times only talks to drug doctors whenever they want to talk about health. So now let's read again. No one really knew much about them. They are essential for human life. Oh, it's wonderful that New York Times finally discovers that these microbial flora, they are essential for human life. Thank you, New York Times. They're needed to digest food. Isn't that wonderful, the great discoveries that the New York Times is making? To synthesize certain vitamins. I was taught that in medical school in 1958, and now in 2012, New York Times is informing its readers. To form a barricade against disease-causing bacteria. Again, that's something that I was taught in 1958 in my classes of bacteriology. King Edward Medical College, Lahore. Continuing. But what do they look like in healthy people, and how much do they vary from person to person? There was a large study published in the spring of 2012 where they looked at, this was an enormous study, something like 200 scientists participated in it, and they with genetic tools, they studied the various types of bacterial species, and they came up with 1,000 species or so. And so the New York Times writes an article based on that, and I found this section that I just read to you very amusing. New York Times never has the courage to say, oh, we've discovered this now, but when the reporter should say, when I called some integrative doctors who really focus on health, they say, oh, this is all old news for us. That's why we use probiotics. That's why people centuries ago used to use yogurt or kefir or other pre-digested foods with enzymes derived from microbial origin. So I'm going to read it to you quickly again, New York Times. No one really knew much about them. They are essential for human life, needed to digest food, to synthesize certain vitamins, to form a barricade against disease-causing bacteria. But what do they look like in healthy people? It's very simple. You take a stool sample, put it on a slide and look it under the microscope. You can take a swab from the oral cavity, look at it under the microscope. You can take a little swab from the tissue taken from the stomach biopsy or the esophagus biopsy, looks into the mirror. The reason I thought I would do this program to have some fun with myself is really to reveal to you the prejudice that the New York Times and all the mainstream doctors have against these time-tested, empirically validated, natural remedies which restore health by focusing on restoration of the bowel flora, the stomach flora, the intestinal flora, the oral cavity flora, and the flora of the perianal skin. Our vision at Children's Health Core is to provide authentic information untainted by corporate deceptions, free of cost to people all over the world. You can share our vision, forward this YouTube segment to your contacts. Should you wish to do more, visit us on www.kids123.org, kids123.org. Tell us how you would like to participate in this effort, how would you like to volunteer your talent or your time, or in other ways you want to support us. Thank you for joining me, and do join us again soon. Thank you.